Lancaster for a little while. But that didn't work out. So, I've been there. Alright, so let's get started. Chapter 10. An Unexpected Truth. They traveled for 3 days with no signs of Eudoxius or shadows. As the sun was setting on the third day, Rose spotted something in the distance. "Rigden, is that a house up ahead?" she called to him, pointing to a small clearing in the distance. "It looks like it," he called back, shrugging. "It looks abandoned. Maybe we can stay there for the night," Deviano suggested. "Can't hurt to take a look," Talon added. They landed a few miles from the house, just as the sun was sinking below the horizon. As they made their way through the trees, Rose heard the chattering of several animals. Something about the noise made her uneasy, but she brushed it off. The small house came into view. Deviano was right. It looked neglected. There were many overgrown rose bushes around the house, and some ivy starting to creep up the walls. As they walked around the house, Rose thought she saw a small figure in one of the upstairs windows, but it was gone when she looked back. Again, her instincts screamed a warning to her, and again she brushed it off. "Well, all the windows are intact at least. The door looks like it's in good condition too," Deviano pointed out. "We should probably stay on the main floor, though. If something tries to attack, we'll know about it a lot sooner than if we were upstairs," Rigden said. "I agree. There looks to be a chimney over there, so there should be a fireplace or a stove of some kind inside," Rose said. "There's a stack of firewood here. We should carry some in before it gets dark," Talon said, grabbing an armful. Tack wrapped his tail around a piece, too. They all grabbed armfuls of firewood and carried it in the front door. Rose was right. There was a wood-burning stove in the kitchen, just off the entryway.
Mommy?
What?
Can we have a fight play outside?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Lancaster is extremely close to York. 30 minutes. I probably drove through it on my way then. Alright. Talon and Tack put their wood in the stove, and Talon fed it a small thread of flame to get it going. While the stove heated up, Rose and Kariko looked through the kitchen in search of food. There wasn't much in any of the cupboards except some dried vegetables. "Guess we eat our own food tonight. These cupboards are pretty bare," Rose said. "What, were you hoping for a 5-course meal?" Deviano laughed. "I guess I was just hoping for something different to eat," Rose laughed. They brought in their saddlebags, and the dragons settled down at various places in the woods near the house. Rose found a well nearby and heated some water. She cut up some of their dried meat and the vegetables, adding them to the water. More soup," Talon said. "Feel free to cook your own food, then," Rose snapped. "Hey, food is food if you ask me," Rigden laughed. "You'll eat just about anything," Rose agreed. "That's true, I will," Rigden laughed again. "I'm going to look around upstairs, see if I can find some bedding or something for us to sleep on tonight," Deviano said. Rose almost told him about what she had seen earlier, but stopped herself. After all, she wasn't entirely sure what she had seen. While Deviano was searching upstairs, Rose tended the soup, which was beginning to boil. As she started ladling it into bowls, Deviano came back down with blankets and pillows. "Nothing much upstairs, either. 2 bedrooms with furniture. The rest are empty from the looks of it. Found these in one of the closets," he said, setting the blankets and pillows on one of the couches. "I guess no one lives here then, or hasn't for a while anyway," she shrugged. "Is the food ready yet?" Rigden said, walking into the kitchen. "Yep, I think so," Rose said, pointing to a roll of steaming bowls. "Let's eat," he yelled, grabbing a bowl. The others followed suit, settling in around the table and in chairs in the living room. Dinner was a fairly quiet affair. As soon as they were finished and had washed out their bowls, the group set about making the living room as comfortable as possible before nightfall. There was an oversized armchair for Kariko and Rose to curl up in, while the men discovered the sleeper sofa was more than big enough for the 3 of them. "No spooning with me, Talon," Rigden warned, trying to keep a straight face. "As if I would spoon with you," Talon rolled his eyes. "You know you want this," Rigden winked, motioning to his body. Ew, no, I definitely do not swing that way. Talon blushed slightly. You're no fun. Regden stuck his tongue out childishly. It's not like you do either, Regden. Deviano laughed. True, but it's so easy to tease him, Regden laughed. All right, enough. Let's not scar poor Kariko even more than she already is, Rose said with a smile. What are they talking about, Rose? Kariko asked. I'll tell you when you're a little older, okay? Rose said as the men laughed all the harder. Okay, Kariko said, settling into the armchair. Rose tucked her in and then curled up next to her. The men settled in on the sofa. A few hours later, a high-pitched screeching tore them all from their sleep. Someone screamed, and the fire went out. What was that? Talon jumped out of bed, a fire enveloping his arms, lighting the room. Rose looked down and saw Kariko hiding under her blankets. Pulling back the covers slightly, Rose looked into Kariko's terrified eyes. Deviano looked out the nearest window. We need to get upstairs fast, he said, turning to Rose. He looked very concerned. Rose, there's a group of 8 doxies heading straight for the cottage. There are other creatures with them, things I've never seen before, Kijani called out to Rose, showing a mental image of something indescribably horrid. Kijani says that there is a large number of Adoxies heading this way, along with something nasty she's never seen before, Rose relayed. Rose, take Kariko and go upstairs. Daviano, go with them. Talon, Tak, let's go give the dragons a hand with this, Regden ordered. Rose, Kariko, and Daviano went upstairs. They entered the room Rose had seen from the outside, where she thought she had seen someone in the window earlier. Moonlight streamed in through that very window, painting everything in its pale silver. It looked like a room meant for a small child, maybe 6 years old. What do you think happened to the people who lived here? Kariko asked, walking towards the bed. I still live here. Nothing happened to me, came the voice of a small child. As a tiny figure stepped from the shadows near the bed, Rose could see herself reflected in the young girl's face. What's your name, child? Rose asked, kneeling near her. It's on the western side of... Or is it into shadow? Okay, bye, Shadow. Burn it all. No scopes, nice. Yeah, I have 2 pairs of no scopes, Swaggy. I don't know how well you guys will be able to see this. I have a blue pair of the Minotaur ones as well. They're going out of business on the no scope side, so I got a discount. Thorn, what's yours? She asked quietly. My name is Rose, and these are my friends Kariko and Deviano. Are you here by yourself? She asked, wondering who would leave such a small child on their own in the middle of the forest. Not always. Daddy is here a lot too, but sometimes he has to leave me alone. But I know how to take care of myself, because he taught me how, Thorn said proudly. Why does your daddy leave you alone? Rose asked. He was trying to find my mommy. She got hurt and couldn't remember us for a long, long time. You have the same eyes as me, but they're switched around, Thorn said, tilting her head in curiosity. Yes, I do. Are you hungry? We have some food here, Rose said, holding up a small chunk of stale bread. Thorn nodded and took it when Rose held it out to her. Just then there was a loud roar from outside, followed by screeching, then silence. The sky outside was just beginning to lighten with the first rays of dawn. Was that a dragon? Thorn asked, wide-eyed. Yes, we have a few dragons with us. Don't worry, they're pretty friendly, Rose said with a reassuring smile. Just then they heard the others come into the house. Rose, it's safe to come down now, Regden called up the stairs. Would you like to meet the rest of our group? Deviana asked Thorn. She nodded, still staring at Rose with intense curiosity. Rose and Kariko went down without Thorn or Deviano. He had convinced Thorn that she should change her clothes and offered to help her. As soon as he was sure Rose and Kariko were out of earshot, he turned to Thorn. I know who you are, child, but it's been a few years since you last saw me. You were only 3 then. Do you remember me? He asked. You look older, but I think I know you. You helped Daddy look for Mommy one time. Where's my daddy? Thorne asked, looking up at Deviano. I think he might be downstairs, actually, he said with a smile, helping Thorne tuck her tunic over her head. Yes, we're reading today. Earlier I did the extra world building stuff that I talked about yesterday. So when you watch the VOD, the first hour or so is that. Meanwhile, Rose and Kariko entered the kitchen. Rose stopped dead in her tracks when she saw that Rigdon and Talon were not alone. A familiar red-haired man stood at the back door. Rose stared in disbelief, her mouth hanging open slightly. Look who finally caught up with us, Rigdon said, putting a brotherly arm around Matthias' shoulders. Hi, Rose, Matthias said, smiling sheepishly. Just then, Thorne and Deviano came into the kitchen. As Rose watched, Matthias' face showed surprise, then joy when he saw Thorne. Thorne was likewise happy when she spotted Matthias. The young child's face broke into a broad grin. Rose was about to say something when Thorne exclaimed, Daddy! And rushed to Matthias. To her surprise, Matthias knelt down and scooped her up as she reached him, hugging her tightly. He looked at Rose in time to see a look of hurt and confusion cross her face. He looked back apologetically. Rose, he said softly. No one moved. I can't. She shook her head. She started for the door. Rose, please wait, he called after her. She rushed past Matthias, Thorne, and Rigdon, out the back door and into the forest. Rose, wait! Matthias shouted after her. Come here, Thorne. Rigdon held out his arms. Thorne went over to him, and Matthias gave him a look of gratitude before dashing after Rose. Uncle Rigdon, was that my mommy? Thorne asked quietly, resting her head against his shoulder. Yes, little one, it was, he said sadly. She still doesn't know me, does she? Thorne asked, equally sad. No, she doesn't, Rigdon said. What happened? How could Miss Rose not know her own child? Kariko asked incredulously. Mommy got hurt by Grandma Olivia after I was born and forgot me. Thorne looked at Rigdon. It's true. The simple version is that Rose forgot everyone and everything for a while. Slowly, her memories did return. All of her memories, except for those concerning Thorne. We hired a wet nurse and a nanny to take care of Thorne. Matthias stayed with her for a time, too, but eventually the need to find Rose made him leave her with the nanny. The nanny brought her to Deviano at the main cottage, and he looked after her for a time as well, Rigdon explained, watching for Kariko's reaction. It's just so similar to what happened to me. Do you think it's possible for me to get my memories back then? Kariko asked hopefully. I don't know, Rigdon said cautiously. We don't know how you lost yours. But still, anything is possible, Deviano said. Kariko nodded, lost in thought. Uncle Rigdon, is Mommy mad at me? Thorne asked. No, sweet one, she is not. She is mad at Daddy, but not for what she thinks she is. He'll explain it all to her, Deviano answered, patting the little girl on the back gently. Will she remember me then? Thorne asked. I don't know, Rigdon answered. Rose, please, stop. Let me explain. Matthias called as he ran after her. She ignored him. How could this happen? Was he cheating on me and I just never knew it? No, that can't be. He wouldn't cheat. Would he? Maybe she's just some orphan he found in the woods. Rose, come on, let me explain, please, he yelled, closing the distance between them. She gave up trying to outrun him. Turning to face him, she said angrily, What is there to explain? Everything! It's not what you think, I swear. I didn't cheat on you, he said desperately. But you kept that girl a secret from me for 6 years, she said angrily. For your sake and hers. And only for 3, not 6, he replied calmly. She's 6 years old, Matthias, she replied skeptically. Yes, but we only found you again 3 years ago. Before that, you just didn't remember, he said. What the hell is that supposed to mean? She looked annoyed. There is no easy way to explain this, Rose. She was only a few months old when Olivia attacked you and erased your memories. I've taken care of her as best as I could over the last 6 years, but she needs her mother. He looked at her, emphasizing the last word with a look. Are you trying to say that I'm her mother? Rose sat down on a stump as that thought sunk in. Yes, Rose, she is your daughter. Our daughter, he said, standing next to her. Why don't I remember her then, or being pregnant with her, or anything else about her? Rose asked, confused tears rolling down her cheeks. Our best guess is that something went wrong with one of Mother's spells, like usual. Instead of erasing all of your memories, it only erased the most important, most recent ones. He shrugged, but she didn't see it. Why didn't you tell me before now? She asked, the hurt and anger plain in her voice. We waited to see if your memories would come back. When they started to, we hoped those memories would too. When they didn't, even after 2 years, we weren't sure what to do. By that point, Thorn was 3 years old, he said, wincing at her pain. So what? You just decided not to tell me I had a child waiting for me at home? Why not tell me? She demanded. I wanted to tell you. I did. But you didn't even remember me for those 2 years. I wasn't sure how you would react. I know you still care for me, but at the same time, I know things have changed between us somewhat. I'm not judging you or accusing you of anything at all. But when we first tracked you down, before the memories started coming back, you were close to someone else, he explained, doing a poor job of keeping his pain hidden. Surprise, baby. What a role reversal. Right? Right? I was with another man? I don't remember much from that time, and what I do remember is all jumbled, hazy. I know I was in the Northeast for a while. I know that's where Rigdon first found me, and things started coming back. She looked up at him, confusion clear in her eyes. Yes, once Rigdon found you, he visited you often. He was watching, always, for signs that you were starting to remember. Eventually you did, mostly. Finally you remembered me, your childhood, and your duty to the kingdom. But there were no indications that you remembered your daughter, he said sadly. When I saw her upstairs for the first time, I was so surprised. She looked so much like me, Rose said in wonderment. Yes, she does. She's just as smart, too. I knew there would come a time when I might have to leave her in order to find you, and she understood that when I told her about it. She just wants her mommy back. She knows you don't know her, and even though that makes her sad, she knows you're alive, and that makes her happy. He tried to smile some. Did you leave her here alone? Rose asked suddenly, almost accusingly. No, I did not. There was a nanny with her when I left a few months ago. She seemed a bit unreliable, but there was no one else. I've trained Thorn in self-defense, and Raiden has taught her how to hunt and forage too. She's a natural at it, he said proudly. Praise baby, what a role reversal. Her whole life just changed. Yeah. I told you, I don't like the stereotypical stuff. So this is an example. Yeah, Rose just found out she has a kid that she didn't know about. Does she have any magical abilities? Rose asked curiously. She seems to, but since neither Rigdon nor I do, we haven't been able to test or train her, Matthias shrugged. She seems so strong and mature for one so young. So sweet, too, and innocent, but not so innocent as to be naive. How could I not know my own daughter? She wondered suddenly, looking up at Matthias with tears in her eyes. He hesitantly knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. She pulled her hands back, but then fell into his arms, crying. It's going to be okay, Rose. You know the truth now, however unexpected it is. That's what counts. No one will expect you to become her mother instantly, but she's going to call you Mommy. I've tried to tell her not to, but she's got your stubbornness too. He gently pushed Rose back to arm's length so he could see her face as he said this. All Rose could do was nod. He pulled her close again and held her tight as she cried it out. Back in the kitchen, Rigdon was trying to explain things to Talon and Kariko. Thorn was stoking the fire in the stove. So, Rose had a child, lost her memories, wandered around aimlessly for a while. Her memories came back, but she didn't know about Thorn. Is that about right? Kariko summed it up when Rigdon had finished. Yeah, just about. Talon, you're awfully quiet. You okay? Rigdon asked, watching Talon. The fire magus appeared to be lost deep in his own thoughts. Huh? Oh, yeah, I'm fine, he replied, seeming dazed. He shook his head, but it didn't help any. Are you sure? You look like you've got some serious thoughts going on, Rigdon persisted. Tak, curled around Talon's arm, looked up at him too. I'm all right, really. Don't worry about me, he said, walking out of the kitchen. He stopped at the window in the living room. I knew she was familiar. Rigdon just confirmed it. She's the girl I met a couple of years ago, the one who didn't know who she was at first. I don't think he or Matthias realized who I am then, he concluded. Then, realizing the implications himself, he resolved to keep it secret. I am not going to tell any of them, though. That would just complicate things even more. Thorn is so much like her, too. Tak nudged him, gently bumping his head against Talon's neck. Talon looked down at his scaly friend. DJ, thank you for the host. I know, buddy. You remember her too, don't you? That's why you flew to her when she caught up to us that time. He scratched the wyvern under the chin. Tak squeezed his arm again and looked sad. Yeah, she doesn't seem to remember us either. I missed her too. He patted Tak on the head. He heard the door in the kitchen open and close, knowing it meant Rose was back. It also meant Matthias was back. He couldn't handle it right now. Tak squeezed his arm again, looking toward the kitchen, but Talon shook his head, looking out the window. It's just too painful at the moment, buddy, he whispered. Mommy! Thorn exclaimed when Rose and Matthias came through the door. She rushed over, but Matthias scooped her up again before she reached Rose. Hi, Thorn. Rose smiled softly, tears still in her eyes. Are you still mad at Daddy? Thorn asked. No, sweetheart, I'm not mad at him anymore, Rose answered quietly, looking at her little family. So, who wants breakfast? Deviano asked cheerfully, breaking the tension. Rose laughed. Breakfast sounds great. I have some oats stashed upstairs, Matthias said, setting Thorn down again. I'll get them, she exclaimed and ran upstairs. Rigdon grabbed a pot and went outside to fetch some water, and came back in just as Thorn came back with a big bag of oats. Kariko, why don't you go tell Talon breakfast will be ready soon, Deviano suggested. Okay, she said, and went out to the living room. Kariko found Talon staring out the window, Tak curled up in a patch of sunlight on the sill in front of him. She watched him for a few minutes. Talon? Deviano says breakfast will be ready soon, she said, standing a few feet behind him. He nodded, showing he had heard her, but said nothing. Are you sure you're all right? She asked quietly. He shook his head, so she continued. Is it about Rose? Yes, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Do you want to talk about it? I can be a good listener, she offered, gently touching his arm. He shook his head again. Kariko, Talon, breakfast is ready, came Deviano's voice. Talon didn't move as Kariko walked away. She picked up 2 bowls and spoons. Rigdon looked at her quizzically. Talon's not feeling well, so I'm just going to take his to him, she explained. Is he sick or something? Should I come take a look at him? Rose asked, concerned. Kariko shook her head and was about to answer when Rigdon spoke. I'm sure it's nothing. Some warm food, and I bet he'll feel better in no time. Rigdon said, giving Kariko a knowing, yet suspicious look. Kariko nodded in return and took the food out to the living room. She set the bowl in front of Talon, next to Tak. Talon looked at her, then picked it up with a muttered thanks. She plopped down on the couch, watching him closely as she started eating. He had turned around to eat, his back now to the window. He was trying to ignore the young girl's scrutiny. Is something wrong? He asked, finally getting annoyed. No, Kariko replied. Why are you staring at me then? He asked. Not staring, watching, she corrected. Okay, why are you watching me then? He rolled his eyes. Because I know something isn't right and I'm trying to figure out what it is, she replied. I said I didn't want to talk about it. He glared at her. Technically, you only shook your head. Just because you don't want to talk about it doesn't mean I can't try to figure it out, she replied hotly. And what? You think the answer is written on my face? He spat back at her sarcastically. No, but you can tell a lot about a person's thoughts by watching their eyes and their facial expressions, she explained, annoyed with him. Whatever, he muttered, finishing the last few bites in his bowl. She finished her breakfast as well, took his bowl, and walked back out to the kitchen, all without another word to him. That kid is smarter than she looks, I'll give her that. She'd make a good spy, with some proper training. Maybe in a few years. He smiled a bit. Teviano is right. There is more to Kariko than meets the eye. She will be a great ally in the future. Or a formidable enemy. He sighed, pushed off the windowsill, and turned to look down at Tak. Come on, buddy, he prodded Tak. Let's go see what we're doing next. The scaly-winged serpent yawned toothily and slithered up Talon's proffered arm. In the kitchen, he found Megaeus, Rigdon, and Deviano finishing their oatmeal. So what are we doing next? Where are we headed? He asked, looking around at the three of them. We were just discussing that, actually, Megaeus said coolly. Rose needs to go to Faldor to report on what we've discovered about Kariko and the Aedoxes. We think you should go with her. The two of you need to get to know each other if you're going to be working with us, Talon, Rigdon stated matter-of-factly. Deviano nodded in agreement, but Megaeus looked angry with this arrangement. Why can't Thorn and I take her? Megaeus asked, clearly annoyed. The other two gave him equally annoyed looks. We talked about this already, Megaeus. Rose is going to need some time to get used to the idea of being Thorn's mother. She also has to come to terms with the fact that we, all of us, kept that from her for the last 3 years. Being around us right now, constantly reminded of it, won't help her heal any. Talon is the only one here she doesn't know. They need to get used to each other and learn about each other if he's going to be working with the Dragon Knights. A few weeks spent traveling together will help them get acquainted, Deviano said sternly. Speaking of the girls, where are they? Talon asked, noting their absence. Upstairs packing. Rose is trying to find Kariko some better traveling clothes. That dress she has on isn't really suited for traveling. Or training, Rigdon said. Training? Talon wondered if they had reached the same conclusion he had earlier. Yes, training. Megaeus and I will take Thorn and Kariko to his main cabin to train them, Rigdon explained. While you and Rose are traveling to and from Faldor, they will start Kariko's and continue Thorn's training. I will be searching out some of the other Dragon Knights to see what they've heard lately in regards to the Aedoxes, Draknat, and other things. I will then send them to Faldor. I plan to end my journey in Kryptos to see what the elves know as well, Deviano explained. Sounds like a decent plan, Talon admitted, not looking at Megaeus. I'm glad you agree. Let's get our supplies packed up. Rose and the girls should be ready to go soon, Rigdon nodded. Megaeus glared at all of them and stormed out the door. Upstairs, Thorn dug her backpack out of her closet and started packing a few changes of clothing. Rose took Kariko to another room where Thorn's nanny had left most of her things. They found a pack for her, and the nanny's clothes fit reasonably well. While Kariko changed, Rose packed some of the clothes for her. They returned to Thorn's room to find the young child examining a set of sheathed daggers in one of her dresser drawers. Remembering what Megaeus said about her training, she asked Thorn, Do you know how to use those, Thorn? Yes. Daddy made sure I knew how to defend myself before leading me here, she said. picking one up and belting it on. She picked up a second one with a matching belt and handed it to Kariko. I don't know how to use daggers very well, Kariko admitted as she took it and belted it around her waist. Don't worry. Daddy and Uncle Rigdon have taught me a lot. Oops, don't worry. Don't worry, Matthias and Rigdon are excellent teachers, Rose reassured her. Yes, they are. Daddy and Uncle Rigdon have taught me a lot, Thorn agreed proudly. Daddy told me about that. I'm glad they've taken care of you, Thorn. I'm sorry I haven't been here for you and that I have to leave you again so soon, Rose said sadly, putting a hand on Thorn's tiny shoulder. I know, Mommy, but now you know about me. That means you'll come back to me after visiting Grandma and Grandpa, right? Thorn asked hopefully. Of course, Thorn. Now that I know about you, I will try to be a good mother. I can't make any promises that I'll do it right, and I know this is going to be hard on all of us, but I will try. That much I can promise. Rose hugged Thorn for the first time. Then she felt Kariko hugging her too. I wish I had a mother like yours, Thorn, Kariko said enviously. You don't have a mommy? Thorn looked shocked. When Kariko shook her head, Thorn added, I'll share my mommy with you. Mommy, can you be Kariko's mommy too? I would love to, Rose said, smiling at her daughter's generous heart. Maybe it will help all of us figure out everything, she added to herself. They all cried. We should probably go back downstairs now, Kariko said after a few minutes. Yeah, probably, Rose agreed as they all wiped tears from their eyes. Outside, they found the men all packed and the dragons saddled. Matthias still looked angry about the plan, but smiled when he saw Thorn holding Rose's hand. Rose and Thorn walked over to him while Kariko went over to Rigdon. Matthias helped Thorn mount his dragon, Claret, then turned to Rose. I don't like the idea of you going off on your own with him, Matthias said seriously. I know you don't. You've said nothing but that all morning, but Rigdon is right and you know it. Besides, I told you already, I want to go with him. There's something about him, something familiar, that I just can't figure out. I need to figure this out. Not just Talon, but you and Thorn too. I need time to deal with it all. You know that, she said forcefully, annoyed that he was whining about it again. I still don't like it, he said in hushed anger, grabbing her arm. I know you don't. Now stop. It's not going to change anything, she replied just as angrily, jerking away from him. She walked away before he could say anything more. Daddy, is Mommy mad at you again? Came Thorn's voice. Yes, she is, Matthias sighed, climbing into the saddle behind his daughter. Why? She asked. Because Daddy is an idiot, he replied bitterly. Talon watched their exchange with curiosity and mild amusement. I bet he was expecting everything to go back to normal, or at least expecting her to stay with him and Thorn. He doesn't trust me, I get that, but it's almost like he doesn't trust her either. This could be a long trip. Interesting, but long. Talon made his way over to Mist, with Tax zooming around his head. Are you ready to go? Rose asked, anger still lingering in her voice. She had already mounted Kijani. Ready when you are, Rose, he called up to her as he mounted Mist. Kariko, Thorn, be good while I'm gone. Listen to Rigdon and Matthias, and I'll see you soon, she called out to them. After they waved to her, she added to Talon, Let's go. The king and queen are waiting for us. Kijani and Mist took off, heading in a northwesterly direction as the rest of the group watched, Tech flitting around the heads of the larger dragons. Daviano was the next to depart as his dragon Liliana headed east. Rigdon and Matthias took off with the girls, heading north towards the main cabin. Separate ways. How long do you think it will take us to get to Faldor? Talon asked innocently. I don't know, Rose snapped. It depends on how fast we fly, how often we rest, and for how long, and if we run into any trouble along the way. No need to bite my head off. I was just asking, he replied evenly. Her only response was to glare at him. Rose, keep in mind you'll be spending the next several weeks with him. It's not his fault. He had nothing to do with Megaeus Deviano and Rigdon keeping Thorn from you. Kijani reminded her gently. Don't remind me. And don't think you're all innocent in that matter either. I know you kept her from me too. We all did what we thought was best. Most of the time you were gone, you didn't even know who you were, didn't even know your own name. Would you have believed Rigdon if he had told you everything when he first found you? Probably not, Rose sighed. That doesn't change the fact that a very important person was kept from me. I know it doesn't. But now you know about her, and that's what matters, Kijani said, and Rose nodded. Everything okay over there? Taylin's voice broke into their conversation. Yeah, sorry. I know none of this is your fault. It's just a lot to deal with right now, she said, somewhat embarrassed she had taken it out on him. Nothing to apologize for. You are dealing with a lot. I'll listen if you need to talk or vent or whatever, he offered. I just might take you up on that offer. It's all just so crazy. My mind hasn't come to terms with it completely, she said. Give it some time. You'll get there. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually it will all work out, he said kindly. I hope so, she replied, but she could hear the doubt in her own voice. So how long do you think it will take to get there? He asked with a smile. She had to laugh this time. Probably about a week and a half, or 2 weeks, if we keep this pace. So I have 2 weeks to annoy you? He joked. More like 4, unless you're planning to stay in Faldor, she corrected. As tempting as that offer sounds, I think I'll pass on an extended stay in the lovely capital. It's not that bad, she feigned offense. The castle is nice, he said, making her laugh again. They flew the rest of the day, making jokes and small talk along the way. When they stopped for the night, her thoughts turned to the 2 young girls she had left behind. She hoped they were doing all right without her. One second, guys. I need to go see what my kids are doing. They are being louder than they should be. Be back in a minute. Sorry about that, guys. My husband is still at work, so he's not here to keep an eye on them. Alright. Smokey and Claret landed at Megaeus' cabin around midday. Both girls had done very well on the quick flight. The dragons had been eager to take flight after the attack the night before and had flown faster than normal, but the girls didn't seem to mind. Was not ready for the blue. Yeah, that was me muting my mic so you guys don't hear the rustle and everything of it coming off my head. They unloaded the saddlebags and removed the harnesses. The dragons headed for their cave at the back of the house. Thorn showed Kariko around the house, giving her a proper tour. And this is my room! Thorn proclaimed proudly, leading Kariko into the last room. Wow, Kariko exclaimed. Thorn's room was next to Rigdon's room upstairs. She had a large bunk bed, 2 bookcases, a desk, and a small couch. I was trying to make sure you were still alive, Skull. Sis and her bloops. You can share my room if you want. There's plenty of room for both of us, Thorn offered. I would love to share your room, Kariko agreed. Thorn showed her where to put her things, then they went back down to the kitchen. Rigdon was just finishing making lunch. I was just about to call you down to eat. Did you get everything put away then? He asked. Yes, Uncle Rigdon, Thorn smiled. Kariko just nodded as they sat down at the table. Rigdon set a plate of sandwiches on the table, then sat between the girls. What should we do this afternoon? He asked as they started eating. Miss Rose said you would train me? Kariko asked uncertainly. Yes, we will train you. Rose wanted us to make sure you learn how to defend yourself, as well as learning to ride the dragons and take care of them. Rigdon nodded. I don't know anything about any of those topics. Kariko looked worried. Nothing to worry about. That's why we're going to train you, so you can learn. Matthias smiled, walking into the kitchen. And I'll help you practice, Thorn declared. I guess we should get started then. I have so much to learn, she laughed nervously. It's good to know you're still alive, Skull. We'll start with the basics and go from there. What each weapon is, how to clean and care for it, and maybe even how it is made. If there is still time before dinner, we'll start working with some of the smaller knives, Rigdon explained. Kariko nodded. Rigdon is our main weapons expert, though Talon has plenty of experience as well. I'm decent with some of the weapons, but my knowledge isn't as extensive as theirs, Matthias explained as they walked outside and headed for the small armory near the dragon's cave. Again, Kariko just nodded. Rigdon unlocked the door with a key he kept on a small chain around his neck. The door swung inward, and he heard Kariko gasp behind him as she looked at their collection. Yes, we have quite the collection, don't we? It's good to be proficient in several weapons, as you never know what will happen in a battle. More often than not, you'll lose the weapon you started with, and will have to use whatever you can find, Rigdon explained as they entered the building. This floor is dedicated to bladed weapons, while the upper floor is for bows and dragon-related items, Matthias explained. Kariko looked around in awe. These cases over here hold a variety of daggers and small knives good for hunting or piercing chainmail. They won't be very effective against plate mail, but they have plenty of other uses. Rigdon pointed to a row of glass cases. Some are even small enough to conceal up your sleeve. He flicked his wrist, and a small blade appeared in the palm of his hand. Another flick, and it disappeared back up his sleeve. That was a cool trick, Kariko said, getting excited. One of many you will learn, Rigdon said with a grin. What's this one? She asked, her hand resting on a sword with a straight blade and a flared tip. A favorite of Talon, that is a falchion. This version is called a cusped falchion because of the cusped or flared tip at the end of the straight blade. It's a single-edged sword and good for many fights. Rigdon nodded his approval. Hi, Leon. My chat description says what it is. World building and read-through. You've come in about halfway through the read-through. My VODs have the previous chapters, if you would like to catch up on that. That's why it's under Twitch Creative. I was never very good with that one, Matthias laughed. You're a little small for that much sword right now, but we'll work our way up to it, Rigdon laughed. That one is definitely too big, Kariko said with wide eyes, pointing at a massive sword leaning against one wall. That is a great sword. The blade alone is 4 feet 8 inches. The grip is 10 inches, and it takes 2 hands to even hold it, let alone wield it. It weighs about 7 pounds, and this one is a double-edged sword. You would need to constantly train with it to maintain the strength it takes to use a sword of that size, Rigdon warned her. Let me guess. We'll work our way up to it? She said apprehensively. Maybe. That's a big sword, even for me and Deviano, Rigdon said. Kuriko nodded. Daddy, can I work with my khopesh today? Thorne asked, standing in front of a case of shorter swords with curved blades. I don't see why not. You're getting pretty good with it. Let's go set up the dummies, Nagaya said, grabbing a second khopesh from the case as Thorne picked up hers. What will I be starting with? Kuriko asked Rigdon. She had a funny feeling in her stomach. She was so nervous. You'll be learning about the blades today before you do anything else with them, Rigdon said as he sat down at a small table against one of the walls. Where do we start? She wondered, sitting next to him. With this, he said, motioning to a book on the table she hadn't noticed before. Oh, she said, slightly disappointed. Is something the matter? He asked. I know you want to jump right into using them, but you need to know how to care for them and what the properties of each one are first. It's not that. Well, it is, but it's also that, well, that I don't know how to read. She hung her head. That's actually not at all surprising, considering how long you've been on your own. We will teach you how to read and do simple math, as well as strategies, how and when to use what weapon, and survival skills. You have nothing to worry about and nothing to be ashamed of. He put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Thank you, she whispered, looking up at him with tears in her eyes. Nothing to thank me for either. Now let's get started. I will read the words to you as we go through the book, so you can learn to read as we go. If there's anything you don't understand or want to know more about, just say so. He smiled at her. And so the rest of the first day passed, with Rigdon and Kuriko studying in the armory, while Thorne and Megaeus continued training outside. When it came time for supper, Kuriko couldn't believe how much she had learned in just one day. Hey, Alpha! How's it going? I think my head is ready to explode, she laughed. We'll take it easy tomorrow. I think we'll go out in the forest and see what kind of knowledge you have when it comes to herbology and wildlife. Rigdon smiled. You both made great progress today, Megaeus acknowledged. Both girls beamed with pride. They ate the rest of their dinner in silence. The girls were worn out from all the excitement of the last few days and headed to bed early. So, how did she do today? Megaeus asked as he and Rigdon sat in the living room drinking tea. Much better than I expected. She is such a fast learner. I think she'll catch up to Thorne in no time at all, Rigdon said. Did you make it all the way through the book, then? Megaeus asked mildly. We did, surprisingly. She had very few questions, and most of them were more like statements, double-checking her own understanding of what she was learning. She is one smart kid, all things considered. Rigdon nodded. That's good. It should make it easier for her to catch up on things then. And Thorne is excited to have a sisterly figure to learn from, as well as teach things to, Megaeus agreed. It does seem like they've bonded really well. I'm happy for the girls to finally have some normalcy in their lives, Rigdon said. Catching the look from Megaeus, he added, Don't get me wrong, you've done the best you could with Thorne, considering how insane things have been since she was born. I'm just saying, maybe now that things seem to be settling down for the time being, she'll get to have a more normal life. I know. I'm looking forward to a little time spent at home with her, too, Megaeus conceded, looking somewhat sad. Don't worry about Rose. She'll be fine out there, and it's been a while since she's been home. Mom and Dad will be thrilled to see her again after being gone so long. And Taylin will keep her safe, too. He's a good guy, and he knows his stuff. You don't need to worry, Rigdon said, guessing at the cause of Megaeus' sadness. I know he's a good guy, and that he knows what he's doing. I get this feeling that maybe Rose isn't as sure about our relationship as she used to be before she disappeared. It seems like maybe she and Taylin had a connection. Matthias sounded confused. I'm not working, so it's awesome. About to get me a can of happy juice. Nice! I have a few errands. I have to run a few errands, Rose. I'm gonna head out. Thanks for the stream. Talk to you later, love. I ran out of tequila and other essentials. Those are essentials, yes. I'll see you later, sis. And Alpha, it's always fun not working. About 16 tall boys of cider. Oh, nice! Very nice. Love me some good cider. I vaguely remember seeing him around the town where I finally found her. They didn't seem involved or anything, but who knows what would have happened. Don't torture yourself with the what-ifs. She doesn't seem to remember him, though I am certain he and Tak remember her. Some of his mannerisms give him away. He also knows that she is still with you at this time. Unless she makes the first move, he won't do anything or say anything that could be considered a romantic gesture. I don't know what she's feeling right now, so I can't make any assumptions about her. But I know him, and I know he won't do anything without her starting it. He's a good guy, Rigdon tried to reassure Matthias. That's what I'm worried about, though, that she might start something, he said miserably. Nankuru Naisa, was all Rigdon said. Yeah, I know. It's still hard not knowing what's happening with her right now, Matthias sighed. They finished their tea and turned in for the night. Matthias couldn't sleep for hours, his mind still turning over Rose and what she might be thinking, or doing, right now. He finally fell into a restless sleep sometime in the wee hours of the morning. As Deviano flew east towards Kivisa, he tried to sort out the disturbing rumors that had reached the capital. According to the reports, Draknat the Demon Lord has been gathering shadow demons to increase his army. They think he's planning to attack Kryptos, Faldor, or both, he said to Liliana. It's not impossible. He has always harbored an ill will toward the elves, and Faldor has been a steadfast ally to Kryptos for generations. But why would he choose to attack now, she wondered. I'm not sure. There have been a few other rumors about some people he is trying to hunt down, a young woman and 1 or 2 young men. We don't know anything about them, though, so there's no way to know if they are potential allies or enemies. Well, hopefully our journey to Kryptos will shed some light on things. Maybe Marcus will have more information for us in Kivisa. They made good time, arriving in Kivisa the 4th morning after leaving Matthias' cabin. There had been no trouble along the way, but they were still cautious coming into town. Deviano left Liliana at the old house that Rigdon and Rose used to stay in when they visited the town. Do you have a thing against short boys or tall girls? Oh, because that's almost... Nice, Pine Lord. Are you sure you want to go alone? Liliana asked. I shouldn't be gone long, and even if I got into trouble in town, you'll be there within minutes, if not seconds. I'll be all right, he reassured her. Liliana settled down in a patch of grass near the house to rest, and Deviano made the mile-long trek into town. I wonder where Marcus and Agatha are staying. I should get something to eat first, and see what I can find out, Deviano thought to himself. He walked down the street in search of a pub or bakery, glad to stretch his legs after 3 long days and nights of riding Liliana's back. He found a small pub at the end of a side street, serving eggs and thick bacon for breakfast. He ordered a pint of ale to wash it down with, paid the barmaid, and went to find a seat in a quiet corner of the common room. While he waited for his food, he pulled a small notebook out of his pocket. Flipping through it, he reviewed all the information the king and queen had sent him. It was sketchy at best, but it was his job to get to the bottom of it all. Just as the barmaid brought his food out, the door of the pub opened, and there stood Marcus himself. "Marcus!" he called out, waving to the man. Marcus looked around, waved back, and walked over. "Deviano, good to see you. The king sent word that you would be arriving soon, so I've been checking the pubs each morning to see if maybe you were here and grabbing a bite to eat." Marcus smiled as he took a seat next to Deviano. Daviano laughed and said, "Well, you found me. We got into town early this morning. Liliana is resting back at the house." "I wondered where she might be, since I didn't see her in town anywhere. I left Agatha hunting in the woods nearby," Marcus said. "Have you eaten yet?" "They just brought my food out," Daviano asked. "I did eat before coming, thank you. Should we get down to business, or did you want to wait?" Marcus asked. "No, we should wait. Too many ears to hear," Daviano said as several more men walked into the pub and sat at the bar. Marcus nodded. Daviano ate quickly, and they headed back to the house where Liliana was waiting. Liliana's great yellow eye opened a crack, taking in Marcus and Daviano. "Hello, Marcus. How are you and Agatha?" Marcus gave a quick bow and replied, "We're well, thank you. How have you been?" "I am also well, thank you," she replied, then went back to sunning herself. "So, tell me, what has you coming out to Kavisa?" Marcus said, turning to Daviano. "Shadow, thank you for the host." "We've had reports that Draknat is apparently gathering an army of shadow demons. We think he plans to attack Faldor and possibly Kryptos," he said seriously. Marcus brushed his hair out of his eyes and looked up to the sky. "Yes, I had heard those rumors too. I've even seen some shadows flitting through the forest over the last month or so. They didn't even pause when they saw Agatha. You know how bloodthirsty they can be. But we didn't even warrant a glance from them this time," Marcus said, sounding troubled. "That is unusual indeed. Shadows will pick fights with any creature they can. The fact that you didn't even warrant a verbal threat is troubling indeed." "What could Draknat have offered them to make them so focused on whatever plans he's got?" Daviano wondered aloud. Bloodthirsty. Hi, Brady Bread. Welcome to the stream. "There is one other rumor about Draknat that I've heard, but I'm not sure what to make of it." Daviano had never heard Marcus sound so uncertain. "Let's hear it then, and see what we can figure out from it," he said. "Well, supposedly, Draknat is searching for someone, but can't seem to find them," Marcus said. "Who is this person? Do we know if they are friend or foe to him?" Daviano was intrigued. "Draknat was a mostly solitary demon, not one to make alliances with other demon factions." "That's just it. It's not just one person he's looking for. It's 3. He's looking for 1 woman and 2 men, proficient magic users and deadly with weapons," Marcus tried to explain, looking worried. "Why does this have you so worried, Marcus?" Daviano asked, becoming concerned by the young man's reaction. "I'm not worried for myself, but for you. The rumor is, these 3 people he's looking for..." Marcus paused, unsure if he should tell Daviano. "What about them? Spit it out already." Marcus's hesitation was starting to annoy him. "Well, it's just that the rumor is these 3 people are Rose's siblings." The last part came out in a rush. "What?" Daviano asked incredulously. "The 3 he's looking for are, supposedly, Rose's siblings," Marcus repeated, watching Daviano carefully, wondering how he would react to the news. "Are you certain? Could they have survived too?" he asked, anxiety clear in his eyes. "We're not 100% certain, no, but it is a possibility. We all know Rose managed to survive, so it's always been a remote possibility that the other 3 did as well," Marcus said carefully. "Wow, just wow." Daviano sat down on a large rock nearby. His mind was going a mile a minute. "Are you okay?" Marcus sat down next to him. "I just never thought the others had survived. They were still in the house when..." Daviano shook his head. "The only clue I can give you is that Alarak and Aoife have been looking into whether or not the rumor is true. Sonia has been looking into the Draknat rumor as well," Marcus offered. "There is hope yet, then. I will go speak to each of them in turn and learn what they have discovered. Maybe all is not as lost as I have believed these many years." Daviano sighed heavily. Marcus lay a hand on Daviano's shoulder. What would you like me to do? We need to gather our strength. Find the other knights in this area and along the way to Faldor. Let each town's mayor know what is happening and help them prepare for possible invasion. Some of the southern villages have already begun strengthening their defenses. We went to some of them while dealing with another issue, and they were beset by Edoxies. We helped them fortify and train some of the townspeople to defend the area, Daviano explained. Do you think the Edoxies could be part of the army Dreknat's raising? Marcus wondered. Startled, Daviano said, I hadn't thought about that. It's not impossible. The only problem with that theory is that Edoxies aren't demons. What use would he have for such simple creatures? Maybe he's hoping to use them as a distraction, cause lots of destruction with expendable creatures, and keep us busy trying to chase them all out of the towns, then strike when we're all good and worn out, Marcus offered. That's a brilliant theory. How did I not think of that? It would make perfect sense, and we all know Dreknat is cunning enough to pull it off. But I think the real question we're overlooking here is, why is he doing all of this? Daviano wondered. To that, I have no answers. Maybe Sonia will know more, Marcus said. Well, I think we will spend a day or two here in town, then head over to Umar to see Alarak. It's going to be a long flight, but hopefully uneventful, Daviano said. We should head back into town and make sure you've got all the provisions you need then, Marcus said, brushing his hair out of his eyes. You really should get a haircut, kid, Daviano teased. I'm not a kid, Marcus said, feigning offense. You're younger than me, which means you'll always be a kid to me, Daviano teased again. By the time they reached town again, it was early afternoon. They found some lunch before replenishing Daviano's supplies. Carrying the packs back to the house, they discussed the rumors further. What are you going to do if these three are the other children? Marcus asked. I'm not sure. I did try to search for them afterwards. That's how I found Rose. But I never could track down solid information about the others. I'm worried about how they would react if I did find them now, all these years later. Rose doesn't even know who I am. I've never been able to find the right way to tell her. He looked sadly up at the sky. I know it's got to be tough, keeping that kind of secret from her. I wish I could tell you what the right thing to do was, but I'm just as lost as you are, Marcus said sympathetically. Yeah, I can't even imagine what any of their reactions would be. Would they hate me? Would they be happy to finally be reunited with family? Would they even care after all this time? Daviano shook his head as he started putting supplies away. Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing as he helped put the supplies in Liliana's saddlebags. By the time they stowed everything, the sun was setting. Well, I should head back to my place and get my own supplies ready. Agatha should be back from hunting by now. We'll head through the northern towns on our way to Faldor and raise the alarm, send out the summons for the other knights along the way. If we find out anything more, I'll be sure to let you know, Marcus said, watching the sky turn shades of orange and purple. We will see you soon, hopefully, Daviano agreed, and Marcus took his leave. Are you all right, Daviano? Yeah, I'll be all right. I've always wondered if the other children survived, but I could never prove it enough to warrant searching for them. I always thought they could have, and that made me wonder how they would feel if I ever did find them again. You're their father. That doesn't mean they'll love me or forgive me for not looking harder for them. They could hate me for all I know, and rightly so from their point of view. I just hope they're all right themselves. They're your blood. They will be fine. You are strong, Rose is strong. The others will have been just as resilient and adaptive, if nothing else. I hope you're right, Liliana. Now, we should get some rest before heading out in the morning. It's a long way to Umar, and we'll have to hurry to beat Dreknat. He felt Liliana's agreement, though she said nothing. He went inside and settled down on the couch for the night. He had a fitful night, with dreams full of lost children and the scornful grown-ups they had become. He was thankful to wake up in the morning and leave such heart-rending dreams behind. The trip to Umar was just as uneventful as the one to Kavisa. A week after leaving, they landed on the outskirts of Umar after spotting Alarak and his dragon, Isilme, training in a nearby field. "Alarak!" Daviano called. "Daviano, hello!" he called back with a quick wave, walking towards them. "How have you been?" Daviano asked. "We've been well, thank you. And yourself?" Alarak asked. "Well enough. The king and queen have sent us to see about these rumors surrounding Dracnet and the army of shadows he is raising. We talked to Marcus and Kavisa and would like to hear what you have found out," Daviano said, not mentioning the other rumor Marcus had told them about. "Yes, we've been able to confirm without a doubt that the Dracnet is raising some kind of army. We know he plans to attack. We just haven't found out when yet, or what he hopes to accomplish. Did Marcus tell you what else we've heard?" Alarak looked at Daviano expectantly. Daviano knew then. "About my other children?" "Don't answer a question with another question, please. Let's not beat around the bush, you and I. What has Marcus told you?" Alaric asked with a hard look in his eyes. "Nothing much, unfortunately. He said there have been rumors that Dracnet is searching for 3 individuals, 1 woman and 2 men, and they could be my other 3 children. He had no idea whether Dracnet thinks them friend or foe," Daviano replied coolly. Alaric's serious, analytical nature got on his nerves sometimes. "We have not been able to confirm whether they are friend or foe to him yet, though our best guess is that he may think he can turn them into allies. Our reports have shown these 3 to be very powerful individuals," Alaric replied. "If they are indeed my children, and if Rose is any indication of their potential powers, they would be powerful indeed. Do we have any reports of where they have been sighted?" Daviano asked. "You can't go chasing after them. We've got bigger issues to worry about right now." Alaric glared at him, chastising him. "You forget who you're talking to. I'm older than you. I'm also your superior within the ranks of the knights. Do not think to order me about like you would some child. You are bordering on insubordination. I know my duties," Daviano shot back. "That does not mean you would not go chasing after news of your children, sir. We have a job to do before it's too late," Alaric replied coolly. "Again, do not think to counsel me. I know what I must do and how urgent it is. You always failed to understand that while I kept an ear out from news of my family, I never abandoned a mission to go chasing after any of it," Daviano rebuked him. "That may have been true in the past, but you've also never had concrete proof that they were still alive," Alaric pointed out. That was the last straw for Daviano. Before Alaric knew what was happening, Daviano punched him hard in the face. Alaric tumbled backwards and lay sprawled on his back. "Don't you ever dare to question my honor or loyalty ever again. No, I've never had concrete proof, as you say, but that does not mean I will suddenly abandon my mission now. Yes, we have more proof this time, but with the fate of the entire kingdom on the line, I am not going to sacrifice countless lives in exchange for 3 lives. The sooner you learn that emotions do not rule every action for every person, the better off you'll be, Alaric," Daviano said, standing over emotionless Alaric. "You know I take my duties very seriously. That does not mean everyone else does. I know you well enough to know your family is important to you and that Dracnet is responsible for what happened to them in the past. It is only logical to assume you would want revenge and would want to prevent your other children from falling into his clutches," Alaric continued to glare at Daviano. "Logical, yes, but not necessarily true. You must learn to take into consideration all aspects, not just the logical solutions. You still have some learning to do, my friend, even at your age." Daviano was still annoyed. "Friends don't punch each other in the face," Alaric sat up. "They do, when one of them is being an imbecile," Daviano pointed out, offering a hand up. "I suppose that could be true," Alaric conceded, taking the proffered hand and standing up. "Now, what else do you know about these rumors?" Daviano pressed on. He is gathering an army of shadows to attack Faldor and Kryptos for certain. We estimate the attack will come within the next month or two, at the rate we've seen shadows mobilizing. The three individuals have similar descriptions to what your children looked like when they were younger, but it's hard to know if it is them as adults. Two were in the north, last we knew. One is in the south, somewhere near Nausa. That one has no magical abilities, but he is a wicked talented swordsman, Alaric admitted. 1 second, guys. Daniel, Deviano gasped, amazement crossing his features. He certainly looks like he could be related to you, Alaric offered. You've seen him, have you? Deviano looked at Alaric suspiciously. Several years ago, I went to Nasa to see about having some armor made for Isilme. There is a very good smith there who specializes in dragon armor for all 4 kingdoms. I saw a young man practicing against 4 others in a courtyard, and he bested them all within minutes. I called out to him thinking he was you. The resemblance was uncanny, Alaric admitted. So you knew he was alive and didn't tell me? Daviano was annoyed again. I wasn't sure who he was. He didn't seem to remember much about his early childhood, and didn't even know what town he had originally lived in. I didn't want to get your hopes up. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Alaric looked at the ground. No, you did the right thing. Daviano took a calming breath and let it out slowly. Really, though, he's the spitting image of a younger you. Alaric smiled ever so slightly. It's good to know that at least one more of my children has survived. Daviano sighed. What made you so sure it is Daniel? Alaric questioned. You said he has no magical abilities. Daniel was the only one of the children to be born completely devoid of magic of any kind. That's why he trained so much harder than the rest, to make up for not having magical abilities, Daviano explained. I can relate to that, Alaric nodded. He himself had no magical abilities. Well, we know where one is for sure then. We can also surmise that he will be able to fend for himself well enough should Drachnat attempt to capture him before we can talk to him, Daviano reassured himself. Where are you headed next? Alaric asked. Marcus said Sonia had found more information about Drachnat's plans, so I'll see if I can find her near Hondholm. Then on to Kryptos to talk to the council and Aoife about what to do next, Daviano said. I'll send out the summons for the knights in this area and head for Faldor myself. Over the years, I've made sure the small towns around here were prepared for any kind of attack, so all I need to do is send notices to the mayors to let them know it's time to stock up and get ready, Alaric said. Sounds like you've kept everyone well prepared. I'll leave this area to you then, and see you back at Faldor soon. Deviano nodded. You aren't staying? It's a long journey from Kivisa to here. Does Liliana need time to recover? Alaric wondered. No, we had the wind in our favor most of the way here, so she was able to glide a lot of the time, Daviano explained. Ah, well, then, I will hope the winds continue in your favor the rest of your journey, Alaric said, and turned to where their 2 dragons had been resting the entire time. Don't push Isilme too hard. We are in a race, yes, but we've got some time, Deviano reminded him. Don't you push Liliana too hard either, Alaric said, a hint of mirth in his voice. The 2 shook hands and woke their dragons. After much stretching and yawning on their parts, the dragons were ready to go again. Alaric headed towards his home to prepare and send numerous summons and letters. Deviano was heading north again, towards Hondholm and Teardrop Lake. They were about halfway to Hondholm when Liliana said, I find it odd that we've had such a smooth journey. Usually there's at least an Adoxy running around or something. At the very least, we probably should have seen some of the shadows Drachnat is recruiting, right? It is a bit unusual when you think about all we went through traveling with Kariko. This journey certainly seems tame, Deviano said, feeling a little uneasy about the lack of enemy sightings. They continued on through the rest of the day and made camp late in the afternoon. As Deviano was attempting to light a fire, he felt Liliana freeze suddenly. Deviano? Don't look around. We're being watched closely, she said to him. Where and by whom? He asked, continuing his attempt to light a fire. To your left, in that stand of trees there. It's a shadow, all on its own. Daviano heard the uncertainty in her voice. But they don't travel alone. You're certain there are no others around? Yes, quite certain. All right, then, let's see what this is about, he said to her, then aloud. We know you're over there. Why don't you stop skulking and come out to face me? Daviano turned around as a single shadow demon stepped out of the trees. They stood facing each other for several minutes, neither one moving or speaking. Well, what do you want? Daviano finally asked, breaking the silence. The shadow simply shook its head. Does he mean he doesn't want anything? Or that he doesn't want to talk? Have you lost your voice or something? Daviano asked lightly. This time the shadow nodded. Well, that is surprising. Liliana sounded bemused. And what do you want me to do about it? Daviano asked, confused. The shadow could have just killed him and been on its way, without ever stepping out into the open. Instead, it pointed to its neck and looked at him. What, you want me to heal it? Daviano looked incredulous. The shadow is full of surprises, Liliana said as the creature nodded. Why should I? You're probably off to join Dracnat and his army. Why would I want to help my enemy? Daviano accused. The shadow was shaking its head furiously, as if to say that's not what it was planning to do. 1 second. Should we trust it? This seems so out of place with their nature. Liliana was as confused as he was. If you have any weapons on you, put them on the ground now and take 3 large steps towards me, Daviano instructed. The shadow shook its head again, holding its arms out to the sides, and took 3 large steps towards him. No weapons, huh? This is one odd shadow, Liliana observed. I'm starting to think this may not be what it appears, Daviano said to her. The shadow stood there, looking at him expectantly. Daviano stepped towards the creature cautiously. It flinched as he put a hand on its neck, but it did not pull away. I'd be interested to know how you ended up like this, Shadow. You'll have to tell me once I get you all fixed up, he said conversationally as he used magic to assess the ailment. The shadow's only response was to snap its fingers. I'll take that as a sign that you want to tell me. If that's the case, snap again, he suggested. The shadow snapped again. Well, at least we're getting somewhere now. Maybe you can get more answers out of it while you work with that method, Liliana suggested. Liliana here just had an idea. Why don't you snap once for yes and twice for no, and I'll ask some questions while I try to figure out what is wrong with you, he suggested, glancing at the shadow's face. It snapped once in agreement. Perfect. Are you injured anywhere else? 2 snaps. Are you a male? 1 snap. Are you joining Dracnet? 2 snaps. You know that's hard to believe, right? 1 snap and a glare. Just stating a fact, no need to get huffy about it, Daviano said, trying to think of more yes or no questions. It was several minutes before he thought he'd figured out the problem. I think I know what is wrong. It's actually kind of funny, and answers several of our questions, Daviano said to Liliana, smiling. Please enlighten me, she replied dryly. The shadow isn't a shadow at all. It's a man, a human man, and he has a sore throat that caused him to lose his voice. Daviano laughed, and the man looked at him confused. You're not a shadow demon, are you? He said with a knowing smile. 2 snaps. Yeah, I didn't think so. You have a sore throat, which caused you to lose your voice, he explained to the man. Using a little of his magic, he quickly healed the man and stepped back. Finally, the man crowed hoarsely, relief evident in his face. So, care to explain why you look like a demon, but are in fact a human? Daviano prompted. I don't really know how it happened. I got sick, and we don't have a healer in our village, so I was walking to the next village to get some herbs. But halfway there, I felt tired, so I laid down to rest for a bit. Next thing I know, some guys are shouting at me, telling me demons aren't welcome around here and to get lost. I didn't know what they were talking about, and tried to tell them that, but found I couldn't talk. I wandered around I wandered around a few days, avoiding people whenever possible. Last night, just before the sun went down, I saw myself in a puddle of water. That's when I finally understood why those men thought I was a demon. I certainly looked like one. Then I saw you and your dragon, and I was hoping you'd be able to help me. But without a voice to tell you what had happened, I wasn't sure what you would do if I showed myself. The man paused for a moment. Liliana told me you were hiding over there watching us. That's when I called out to you. Shadows travel in groups usually. It's rare to see one on its own, so I suspected something was different about you. I'm not really sure why you look like a shadow, though. Probably just somebody playing a prank on you or something. There are some witches in the area that like to do that to unsuspecting travelers, Deviano told him. Great. Just great. How do I get back to looking like me? The man pleaded. Usually things like this wear off in about 5 days or so. You should only have a couple more days like this before you're back to normal, Deviano said sympathetically. Oh man, isn't there anything you can do about it? The man begged. Unfortunately, not really. It's only a few more days, and now that you have your voice back, you can tell people what happened to you so they know you're not what you appear to be. Deviano reassured the man. I guess that's true, he said sadly. Here, take this knife just in case. Deviano handed him a small hunting knife. Are you sure? He asked, taking the knife. It's always a good idea to have some kind of weapon when traveling, even when you don't look like a shadow, Deviano nodded. All right, then. Well, I suppose I should head back home now. The man turned to leave. Just remember, no more naps in the woods. At least, not without making a fire first, okay? Deviano suggested. The man nodded and took his leave of them. Speaking of making a fire, Liliana reminded him. Oh, right. You know what? Forget this, he said, and instead lit the fire with magic. They settled in for the night, slept peacefully, and resumed their journey in the morning. Following the Umeå River, they found themselves within sight of Honholm at the end of their third day out from Umar. Do you think Sonia will know more when we find her? Liliana asked as they approached the town. I don't know. I hope so. But we won't know until we find her, Deviano replied as they flew low over the treetops. Deviano! A mental shout reached him. He turned in his saddle to look behind him. A gold dragon was coming up behind them, an elf with silvery blonde hair on its back. Sonia, we were just about to go look for you in town, Deviano replied. Well, I'm glad I found you then. I was just about to head out on patrol. You wouldn't have found me in town. Well, then it is good you found us, Deviano said out loud as Sonia and her dragon drew even with Liliana. I assume you're here because of the rumors, she asked, and Deviano nodded. I'm sorry, but unfortunately I won't be of any help. I haven't heard anything new. We thought that may be the case. We were heading for Kryptos anyway, so figured it couldn't hurt to stop and ask. He shrugged. Takaru and Ayaka will be happy to see you again. It's been a few years, hasn't it? Sonia asked. Yeah, it has. How are they doing? He asked, trying to seem nonchalant about it. Good. Takaru has become quite the warrior, though still works in the hospital, and Ayaka has mastered several healing techniques, Sonia told him, a small smile playing at the edge of her mouth. Don't give me that look, Deviano rolled his eyes. Well, go see them, and maybe Aoife can help unravel the mystery surrounding Dragnet, Sonia said with a laugh. They said their farewells still in the air and went their separate ways. Kryptos came into view that evening, a small glow on the mountainside in the gathering gloom of twilight. And that is the end of that reading. That's as far as I was planning to read today. I've been going for about 3.5 hours now. we covered a lot of topics. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them in chat, or any comments, suggestions, etc. I welcome discussion about my manuscript or anything else. So feel free to ask away. Story time. Yeah, that's the end of story time for today's school. For anyone lurking in chat or anyone new in chat, feel free to give me a follow. I usually stream on Saturdays. I did stream yesterday and today. I will not be streaming next Saturday, the 8th. The 15th, I have a birthday party to go to for my niece, but I will stream on the 16th on Sunday. You can follow me on Twitter at thatsarahperson, SARAH. It's down below as well. Also down below are my YouTube channel, my official Facebook author page, and my blog, which I need to update. 16th, what time? 1 p.m. It will almost always be 1 p.m. I know I started later yesterday, but that was because I wasn't feeling well on Friday. For any changes in my schedule, Twitter is usually the best place to find that kind of thing. I post several times leading up to my stream. So yeah, Twitter's a good place to find that kind of information, and just general what's going on in life kind of things. That's 1 p.m. Central Time also. I don't know if I said that. So 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central European, and what, noon? Noon Pacific? Noon or 11. I can never remember if that's 1 or 2 hours. Next time, I think we'll probably still do a read-through. The next part is also just 2 chapters because it is also a long one. They're also pretty long. I need to get more presentations done. My stream is catching up with what I have done. So I'll be working on that this week. I'm trying to also work on recording these outside of Twitch for my YouTube so that people can watch those without all of the random chat interaction. So look forward to that. And that way people can catch up to when Twitch doesn't keep it. Game of Thrones dilemma. Stream will outpace the rating, right? Yeah. And we only have 2 more seasons of Game of Thrones left, and they're shorter seasons as well. So there's that. And George R.R. Martin has said that there's a plot twist in the books that they can't do in the show because the character involved was killed in the show, but they didn't say which character. So I'm looking forward to that. To both the show and the books. Yeah, big Game of Thrones fan. And George R.R. Martin. If you like his Game of Thrones series, I would suggest reading Fever Dream. It is not related to Game of Thrones, but it is something he wrote, and it's really good. I like it. It's just a single standalone book. Let's see, other than that, some good streamers to follow are actually in chat right now. DJ Spectre, Skullstream, Alpha 56, and White Shadow. 3 of those have links down below. I need to add Alphas. I haven't added Alpha yet, but Alpha is pretty awesome too. Other than that, if nobody else has any more questions or anything, I think we'll go ahead and end the stream. So yeah, keep an eye out on Sunday next week. I will stream again on Sunday. Give you guys a minute to see if anyone has anything more. I'm terrible at outros, in case you can't tell. My cat's down here. One of my cats is still in here. Show you guys my other kitty. Kitty! There's Tesla. That's my rescue kitty. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Skull. Look here.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, and it's not supper time yet. My daughter's in here. It's my kitty. One of my kitties. You guys saw my other kitty earlier. Tesla. This is my rescue kitty. She's still kind of adjusting to life as an inside kitty. We've had her not quite a year. Yeah. Head rubs. Alright, well, I will see you guys all next week, unless I see you in fellow streamers' chats. I hope you guys all have a good week. I'll see you later. Bye.